Hello, and welcome to Chapter 24 of my TearRing Saga Champions of Utena low turn count playthrough. Now, this is another pretty difficult chapter, so I am once again going to be completing my preparations and then saving before starting the map. So we've got a bit of extra time here, and I am going to use some of that time to talk about Raphael, who we've gone over briefly, but I haven't really given him a full description just yet. Raphael starts out extremely strong, with 17 base strength and 13 base speed. That strength is roughly on par with what Naron has at the moment, and we know that Naron is an amazing unit. We're also going to be chucking some stat boosters on Raphael to make those bases even better, and this is going to allow him to face off against a certain late game boss who is normally a real pain to kill, and make it look easy to deal with him in a single round. Raphael's class is called Royal Knight, and it is extremely good as well. It's mounted, obviously, and it also allows Raphael to use all 4 of the physical weapon types as long as he is mounted, which he usually will be in Runan's route. This means he's extremely versatile and capable of using pretty much whatever he needs in any situation that the game throws at me. To top it off, Raphael has 3 skills at base, one of which is Wrath, which we already know is extremely broken. He also has Pavis to shore up his defensive parameters a little bit, as well as the Urbanite skill to help him out on castle and indoor maps. The only thing that could be considered to hold Raphael back are his fairly low growths, but that's okay because we have ways to get around that. Anyway, let's move on to our preparations. This map has a gauntlet of enemies near the start, so we are going to need to bring as many of our powerful mounted units as we can possibly manage in order to clear the way for Runan, since this map is a siege map. To that end, we are handing out a bunch of pylons to all of them, and Raphael is additionally going to take the Tomahawk as a backup option, although that of course is not terribly accurate. I am also handing out miracle charms like candy here, because a large part of the early combat in this map takes place within the range of a huge number of catapulters, and so someone fragile like Plum is going to need all the help she can get in order to survive in that area. One other key unit that I'm deploying is Rochelle, who I'm using because of his extended range with his tomes. We are also loading up Raphael with all of the stat boosters that he is going to need, as well as the occult book to uncap his level, although not all of those are going to be used during this map. You'll also notice that I'm deploying several extremely weak units on this map, such as Arcus and Sharon, and they are here not because of any specific role they have to play in this map, but simply because this game forces you to always deploy the maximum number of units on every single map. And they are just going to hide at the start here and try to keep out of the way of the enemy. So, we are now just about ready to get started on this map, and the first big challenge, as I mentioned earlier, is the extremely large mob of diverse enemies who are all sitting within range of the catapulters across the river. Dealing with this group is quite tricky due to their various threatening weapons, including some long-range weapons and of course brave weapons, as well as an effective weapon or 2 thrown in. So untangling that is going to take some doing. The first thing we do here is have Raphael use a wing potion, because the extra speed from that is very important for him doubling throughout this map, and it also helps out with his avoid. Raffin is the only unit that we have who can 1-round KO this artillery man on turn 1, and that's very important to do because that guy has an arbalest, and that means that he wouldn't be able to be killed on enemy phase. This puts Raffin in what seems to be a pretty precarious position, but we have strategies in place to keep him alive for the upcoming enemy phase, and he does need to be there to kill the other artilleryman on the next turn. The rest of my cavalry is now getting into action, and Mince is going to have a go at an enemy armored knight. He doesn't seem to be doing all that much, just 1 damage per hit, but that's because this enemy has a shield which Mince is going to break straight through. Unfortunately, it did only end up being a 2-round flurry, so Mince didn't end up doing much damage, but Naron is going to be able to come in and finish that guy off, though he does need an adept proc to do it. Now, this map is the reason why we put Seafarer on Plum, and it's all to do with this first turn. If Plum does not have Seafarer, she does not have the movement to dance Runan on any turn after this one, so she has to dance him here and now, and he then has to survive this entire big block of enemies without dying. That then puts more strain on all of my other units, because Runan is not going to be killing any of these enemies, so they are going to have to kill their way through all of them to unblock Runan's path so he can continue to walk. Thankfully, because we have Seafarer on Plum, we are able to delay that dance until turn 3, and that means we have a significantly easier time of dealing with this tough block of enemies. Speaking of Plum, we did our best to protect her against all of these enemies by putting 2 big tough cavalry units next to her, but unfortunately she is still attacked here because one of the enemies has 2 range. She's reasonably capable of surviving this attack, but this is why we gave her so many miracle charms, just in case accidents happen. Meanwhile, Raphael is showing off his extreme skill by killing several enemies effortlessly and proccing Pavis to avoid some damage. Raffin is attacked by 2 enemies here, and this is going to use up his miracle charm because there's no way he can survive a brave crossbow as well as a tome. But this is okay because he doesn't have a ranged weapon equipped, so they don't die and make room for the Chukonu artilleryman to finish him off. And then Plum is also going to be targeted by all of these catapulters on this turn. This is another reason why having Seafarer on her is so helpful, because it also gives her plus 10 avoid. And because of enemy phases like this, I actually think that plus 10 avoid is pretty much as valuable as the plus 1 movement on this map. Of course, what also helps with that is the fact that the enemy catapulters aren't that accurate to begin with. These guys have even lower stats than the ones back in Chapter 18, and in fact I believe they only have about 58 hit before your avoid is factored in. So overall, it's not too bad a gauntlet to run, as long as you're willing to reset. So we are slightly relying on luck for everyone to make it through, but overall it's not too much. On this player phase, we are mostly tidying up this group of enemies with our mounted units, and thanks to Naron having Kanto, they are both able to rush forward as far as their horse's legs can take them. Raphael, of course, is already well ahead of the pack, and he is able to rush ahead and start work on killing the catapulters on the far side of the river on this turn. Raffin needs to kill off the Chukonu artilleryman here, but I'm going to be very careful about where I place him. If he gets hit by a stray catapulter, that is it for him. There is a way to get around this, because if he equips the main gauche, he is able to avoid being targeted by any of these catapulters due to having too much avoid. Unfortunately, I was not able to spare someone to trade the main gauche to the top of his inventory here. Vega is now demonstrating something that I think is very efficient. He is pulling out a single-use Levin sword in order to finish off an enemy using that last use up. It's very satisfying when things like that happen, because he also would not have been able to attack that guy without using the Levin sword due to not having quite enough movement. Vega is getting danced, and he is about to have an extremely lucky round of combat. This other enemy that he's going to kill has a shield, which is extremely annoying, because it means that Vega needs a critical hit in order to break through it. But Vega completely does not care about that, getting not only the crit, but also a double soul proc. And that really showcases the other reason why this game is so fun. Extreme skill followed by extreme luck. Meanwhile, Rishul is having a go at as many of these enemy catapulters as he possibly can. He is making use of some supports from both Mariel and Enter here. Between his avoid boosts from these supports and Sunflame's plus 10 to his protection, Rishul is extremely well suited to killing these catapulters, and that is going to be his job for the remainder of this map. He's going to be sticking around with most of my unmounted units in this central area of the map. Meanwhile, my mounted units are heading off in search of the objectives of this map. So the troop is going to be splitting in two, with some of them heading for the upper right part of the map, where there are side objectives in the form of 3 houses. On the other hand, Raphael is going to be continuing down towards the siege point, so that he can clear out all the enemies for Runan, as well as killing the boss. Stat boosters are not enough for Raphael. He also needs several level ups in order to reach his benchmarks, and because of that, he's going to be used routinely as a boss killer for a while, because each boss gives a guaranteed level up to him. That full level up is substantially more significant than the paltry 20 experience per kill that he gets against every other enemy. Last turn, Raphael killed off the northernmost catapulter from this line, and on this turn that allows Runan to use his full movement while also killing a second catapulter, which is nice for his experience gain. What is less nice, however, is the terrain that catapulter was sitting on, because there's a forest tile there. That's really annoying, because if that wasn't there, we would have just that single tile of leeway for Runan, which could have really helped in the early turns of this map. As it stands, Runan has to use his full movement on absolutely every turn in order to reach the siege point in the minimum turn count. Mince and Naron are going to be baiting out a bow rider, but it's very important that we keep careful track of where Raffen is standing, so that he doesn't get attacked instead. Because Raffen is still on only 7 HP, and he is not going to be healed for the entire rest of this map. We are still working on breaking down this line of enemy catapulters. Raphael and Rishul are being a bit choosy with their targets on this turn, though, because Runan is able to kill another one on the subsequent turn, and having him use his action to take a kill is a very efficient use of said action. So we need to make sure that we don't have them kill the one exactly 5 tiles south of Runan's position here. That said, Raphael has not actually taken a kill yet, and that's because he is about to level up, and we are about to witness the second possible use of the save staff in rigging Raphael's level ups. My original target when planning out this run was to have Raphael gain either strength or speed on each of his level ups, so I had 6 uses of the save staff earmarked for this purpose, because he needs plus 4 strength and plus 2 speed. In practice, though, it turned out that with the assistance of the Salia Codex, it was relatively easy to rig Raphael to gain both strength and speed on his level ups, and that means that I only ended up having to use 4 uses of the save staff for this purpose, which frees up a bunch of uses for other purposes. You might be thinking that devoting all of these resources to a single character for a single boss kill is a bit much, but the save staff does have all of these uses just lying around, and I feel like I'd be foolish to waste them. If I was to redo this run, I think I would still have enough save staff uses left over to rig movement level ups on Lionel for the Chapter 22 1 turn, incredibly. So, One last thing for this turn is that Raquel is doing a little helping maneuver, trading the Sunflame back to the top of Richel's inventory, so that his durability isn't impacted for the subsequent enemy phase. Unfortunately, because Plum is no longer within range of the catapulters, they decide to target Runan instead. And before the end, one of them is actually going to hit Runan, which had me on tenterhooks wondering whether I was going to have to reset and re-rig that strength and speed level up on Raphael. Fortunately, that plus 10 avoid from the Seafarer skill shows its worth once again, and he manages to dodge the last catapulter hit. I actually gave Runan the shield blade at the start of this map in order to prevent situations like this, but unfortunately I equipped the rapier to kill the catapulter and forgot to have someone trade the shield blade to the top of Runan's inventory, so we ended up with this instead. Now, something you might have noticed when I am resetting for things like this is that I occasionally leave the opening cutscene to play for a little bit longer than seems strictly necessary. The reason I do that is that I am trying to hit a different RNG seed. This is mostly just a placebo to help me through my frustration when something is taking a long time to happen, because sadly I am not a tool-assisted speedrun robot, so I cannot pick a specific seed that's going to do something that I want it to do. However, it is important not to spend too long on pretty much the same area of the startup sequence, because if you do that for long enough, you will end up repeatedly hitting the same initial RNG frames, and the thing that you want to happen will just never happen. So the reason I do that is mostly just to help reassure myself that I'm not hitting the same RNG seed, but there is a little bit of fact behind that mostly emotional reasoning. Now, back to strategy. The Bow Rider was not one round KO'd when I baited him in last turn, and because of that I'm going to be able to have Naron use the crit Iron Sword to finish him off. At the time I was recording this run, I had actually never seen the end result of reaching the maximum kill bonus, so I was trying desperately to do that before this run ended. But it turns out that an LTC run is not actually the best situation to get that to happen. And in fact, I don't think that the Iron Sword ends up getting very many more kills from here on out. Now, almost all of the enemies have been defeated, and the sharp-eyed among you will notice that the boss is not among the units who are still on the map. He is in fact going to arrive at the end of this enemy phase, along with a little friend, but it's quite surprising that he has left the gate unsupervised for so long. We've reached the point in the story where Runan is fighting his way through the traitorous Revan lords who abandoned their king and also Runan's father to their fate against the Empire of Canaan. And it's poetic that at this point, the Canaanites are using them as human shields against Runan, essentially betraying the traitors as they deserve. The boss of this map is in a particularly awful situation because not only is he being used as a scapegoat by Canaanite leadership, but also by his own son, who we are going to fight in a couple of maps' time. So it turns out that traitorous nobles have exactly no honor and are perfectly willing to sell anyone, including each other, in order to save their own skins. And to be honest, Dolm really should have seen this coming, because he knows what an asshole his son is. Naron has just broken through the last of the enemies in the northeast part of the map, and that allows us to pick up a couple of items from the houses. Mince grabs a magic shield, which is pretty useful against magical enemies, although I don't think we're actually going to see it used in this run. And then Raffin picks up a miracle charm to replace the one that he expended at the start of this map. Even though we have all of the miracle charms that we bought over in Marl, you can still never have too many of them. Runan needs to heal up here using a fruit, because once again on the previous enemy phase he managed to get hit by a catapulter, and we really don't want him dying to a stray hit this enemy phase from the last one that can reach him. Rishil is about to prove how terrible he is by double missing this enemy catapulter even though he has one of his supports within range. I mostly had to keep Entei well back out of range of the catapulters because she is extremely fragile and I do not have any miracle charms on her. So it's lucky that Plum is around to give Rishil another chance to finish off the catapulter and finally make it mostly safe for all of my fragile units in this central area. With that done, we have pretty much wiped out the entire enemy army, and we're going to turn our focus to the 2 units left between Runan and the Seize Point. Raphael is going to kill one of them this turn, followed up by the boss next turn. And it's important that he kills this guy because he drops a bridge key. That is an extremely important item in a late game map, and getting this drop means that we don't have to worry about buying one. Now, we just saw that Mariel is able to attack on this turn, and that's because this is turn 5 and she has her Aura Rain tome on her. Aura Rain targets the entire map, and to be honest, I probably should have used it here in order to give her a little bit more experience. If I had, there's a chance that she would have been able to reach level 10 and promote during this run, but at the time, I was worried that I wouldn't have enough Aura Rain uses for the remainder of the run, and so I forbore here. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter all that much, because Mariel still does everything that I need her to do, regardless of promotion or not. So, with everything else done, I'm pretty much in tidying up mode at this point. Raffin is going to go into the 3rd house and pick up a Night Crest, which is completely useless. And then Plum is going to have one last dance for pretty much no reason, because as I've mentioned repeatedly, there is no way that she is reaching the benchmark for actually upgrading her dance skill. And that just leaves Raphael's showdown with Dolm, but that is of course going to have to wait until I save Staff, because he is going to gain a level from that, and we of course need to make sure that that level up is favourable for us. One thing that can potentially make this trickier to do is the fact that since Dolm is standing on the Seize Point, he gets extra avoid, and thus Raphael has imperfect hit pretty much no matter what. And that actually limits the number of RNG seeds that can give a strength and speed level up still further. Because of that, I need to make sure that Raphael is as close to perfectly 100% capable of one round KOing the boss as possible. Unfortunately, Raphael took pretty much no damage throughout the map, so Wrath is not going to be helping out much here. So instead, I choose to use the Brave Sword, which will hit 4 times thanks to the Wing Potion that Raphael got at the start of the map. That way, even if there's a stray miss in there, we're still easily able to kill because the boss gets 2-hit KO'd. Offensively speaking, Dolm is a joke. He's wielding an air stock, which is effective against armored units, but obviously we're not going to be able to get an armored unit over here very fast. And even that 3% listed critical is not going to scare Raphael with his amazing stats at all. And that is pretty much it. Most of the enemies are dead, and Runan is able to walk over and seize in order to complete the chapter in 6 turns. With that, Runan finally has a toehold in his homeland once more, and we are going to continue to have some fierce fights in the videos to come. So that will be all for this one, and I will see you next time.